Hello, everyone. So, the government have just released their no deal Brexit plan. And The Guardian here have explained in some detail what this plan would entail. So, let's go through it, shall we? So, the plan is it's a 159-page document, and honestly, it does have quite a lot that it lays out. My favourite part was honestly its first section here on Northern Ireland. So it says that they're going to have no new checks with limited exceptions policy on the Irish border in the event of a no deal. And it says here that they'll introduce necessary changes in legislation before 31st of October. They haven't detailed what that will be yet. But they recognize that it's going to be temporary in nature and it will have risks. And they've also said that the UK will look to engage with the Irish government and the EU as soon as possible following Brexit. So where's the issue here? They know it's temporary, they know it's risky, but they are making steps to provide solutions. Which, if we look a bit further down, we can see is a bit more than the EU is doing. So it says here, the report is conspicuously light on detail for farmers and other small businesses, which rely heavily on moving animals, agri-food and other goods across the border into Ireland. And it says here, in the worst possible scenario, dairy producers on the south of the border would be banned by the EU from accepting milk from cows on the other side of the border, which may put many farms out of business. But don't worry, I hear the EU is extremely benevolent and lovely. I'm sure there's something they can do, given that they're the ones banning the farmers from accepting milk. It states in the deal, the EU tariff and non-tariff requirements will apply to UK exports crossing the land border from Northern Ireland into Ireland, and exporters will need to ensure they comply with these requirements. So, it does say, though, that British and Irish citizens will enjoy equal rights on both islands, even in the event of leaving without a deal. Which is good, you know? If you've got concerns about losing your rights, no, you won't. In fact, the only thing it says here that you're going to need is, besides following those requirements that the EU has put in place, is that people holding a UK driving license will need a motor insurance green card if they're taking UK registered vehicles, taking a UK registered vehicle into Ireland. And it says how that will impact thousands of Irish heritage families in Britain who spend their holidays in the Republic. And I'm sure it'll be a one-off payment, but that is the price of a democratic and free government that answers to the people. You don't not do something that the democratic mandate dictates just because you don't like it. That's not the democratic system we live in. That is not the system that our society has lived in for a long time. There is a reason the UK is as successful as it is. And no, it's not stealing money from the bloody poor countries that they colonized. They lost money doing that. It also says here people living in border areas might incur roaming charges on their mobile phone bills. Now that does sound like a concern. I'm going to be completely honest, that sounds like a concern. But I'm sure, again, that the lovely EU can work with our government to come up with something that works. Because after all, they're very, very understanding and they only want what's best. They wouldn't use Northern Ireland as some sort of pawn in their chess game to try and manipulate the UK or make it more difficult for the UK to leave, would they? Now, as for EU citizens currently in the UK, now we've already covered this, but it says here, the report says that the Brexit will end free movement of people. Excellent. Allowing the government to boost the labour market through fairer immigration system based on skills and talent. That is absolutely brilliant. And I'll go over to a statistical study in just a moment. But just to finish here, it says that it restates the commitment to EU citizens will continue to be able to work, study, and access benefits and services such as the NHS, on the same basis after 31st of October. So let's see. They have to apply for a green card, and they might have problems with roaming data and various requirements set in place by the fucking EU. But besides that, they have the NHS, they can work, and they can study, and they can access benefits. So I don't see the problem here, really. Unless, of course, you're absolutely pathetic and you want to avoid getting a green card so that you can have your free movement in exchange for the freedom and sovereignty of our nation and our government. I'm not willing to sacrifice that. And it finally says EU citizens wishing to remain in the country have until 31st of December 2020 to apply for settled status. So they'll have just over a year. That was enough time for me to get a passport, which required all sorts of form filling, a bunch of money. I had to do all sorts of interviews. I had to get information from my family that I didn't have. So if I can do it, while also doing my contract work, which takes a lot of my time, then so can they. Now, another little funny point here about the fairer immigration system. They use it in quotes to say, as if it's fairer. But let's just point out that they're quite right. A study done on the effect that immigration has on wages points out that it does affect wages. High immigration affects wages, but it does depend on what your job is. So specifically here, it says here that the effects of immigration workers within a specific wage ranges or in specific occupations are more significant. There is quite a lot of evidence that immigration affects low-wage workers the most negatively, and not just in construction. Now, it does depend on how much immigration you're getting. An inflow of immigrants the size of 1% of the UK-born population leads to a 0.6 decline in the wages of the 5% lowest paid workers. And that was a study from the University College of London. Another study found that focusing on wage effects at the occupational level during 1992 and 2006 found that unskilled and semi-skilled service sector, in the unskilled and semi-skilled service sector, a 1% rise in the share of immigrants reduced the average wages in that occupation by 0.5%. So that's a little less than the other study. And then an updated version they did between 1992 and 2014, so a wider range there, found similar results. A 1% rise in the share of immigrants reduced average wages in unskilled and semi-skilled services by just under 0.2%. Now, the interesting thing here is that there's a very interestingly nuanced. So the available research shows that any decline in wages are likely to be the greatest for resident workers who themselves are migrants. So the migrants are the most affected by these declines in wages. And it's because, it says here, this is because the skills of new immigrants are likely to be more similar to the skills of migrants already employed in the UK than for those of UK-born workers. There you have it. Declines in the wages and employment of UK-born workers, it says here, in the short run can be offset by rising wages and employment in the long run. But, that requires proper planning, and I don't think we have that. I'll share a link to that study as well. And frankly, I'm quite happy with the plan that Boris Johnson and his government have put forward. It sounds like a fair compromise. And it sounds like it means we'll actually leave the EU. But we'll just have to see what happens, I guess.